Sony has announced the death of physical games. Maybe they had just announced it when we recorded last week.
Yeah,
But
they just announced it.
they have only made one tweet since this, and it was to promote their fight stick, which I'm sure was already scheduled in some sort of social platforming thing.
And then they did another one for Midnight Controller for PlayStation Hong Kong or something, I think.
Well, because that matters to us, Ed. PlayStation Hong
No,
Kong.
I was just saying, like, because that thing says $658. I'm like, what?
I would pay $658 for you to not interrupt me. PlayStation's 2028 pivot reshapes ownership, industry infrastructure, and player trust. The story of PlayStation's shift away from physical media feels less like a single corporate announcement and more like the slow closing of a chapter that defined modern gaming. When Sony confirmed that new PlayStation games would stop shipping on discs beginning in January of 2028, it wasn't just a logistical update, it was a cultural turning point. PlayStation 6, slated for release that same year, will usher in a future where new titles exist only as digital files, untethered from the plastic cases and printed artwork that once lined store shelves and living rooms. Sony cites consumer trends and cost efficiency, but the decision lands with the weight of finality. The physical era is ending not with a sudden snap, but with the carefully scheduled sunset. Inside Sony, the machinery of that era is already winding down. The company's largest disc manufacturing plant in Salzburg has begun reassigning workers to produce entirely different products. A quiet but unmistakable sign that demand is evaporating. Developers have been told they can still press discs, but only for older games, a concession that feels more like a courtesy than a commitment. The message is clear. The future catalog of PlayStation will live exclusively in the cloud, PlayStation Store, and whatever digital ecosystem PS6 is building to support. Outside of Sony, the emotional response has been far louder. A petition titled "Don't Kill the Disc" surged past 165,000 signatures, fueled by players who see physical media not just as a format, but as a safeguard, a way to own something permanently in the age of where digital storefronts can vanish overnight. Sony has remained silent, even as prominent voices like Hideo Kojima publicly mourned the decision. Kojima described himself as, quote, really sad and, quote, frightened for the future of ownership, echoing a fear shared by preservationists that without discs, games risk becoming temporary, fragile, and dependent on corporate servers that may not last. Taken together, these developments feel like the game industry crossing a threshold it can't step back from. Sony is embracing an all-digital future with confidence, even as players and creators grapple with what might be lost: permanence, collectability, and simple reassurance of holding a game in your hands. As 2028 approaches, the conversation around PlayStation is no longer just about the PS6 power or features, but about what it means to own a game at all, and whether the industry's march toward convenience comes at the cost of its own history.